Welcome to the final part of the Gloomwood inventory tutorial. This is a completely bonus part. You don't have to follow this at all, but it's going to cover a tiny little extra piece of logic, so to speak. And we're going to go over simply adding a kind of storefront. So what this will be at the end is it's going to be simply the same thing as we have here with our items spawning, but instead we'll have a special item that can only be moved if the player has enough points. And so we're just going to set that up so that items cannot be dragged if you don't have enough points. And if you have enough points, you can buy it. And when you move it, that will consider it as bought. And it will subtract the points. We're going to do this rather simply. And so it's not going to be with a UI or anything. It's just going to be a print string just to track the information. So let's get straight into it. So the first thing we need is we need to make a new item, because right now these items that we have here, they work perfectly for all the movement. But if we want to tell them to lock, we want to do that a bit differently, because we could just say add a boolean to it, but I would say it's a better practice to make a new item. And instead of making a brand new item from scratch, we're just going to make a child of this one, which we will say can lock. So create a child blueprint class, and we'll call this a store item. And so this is going to be the same as any other item, works exactly the same way, and it can be replaced at any point in time with this one. So in our AC3D inventory here, we have our constructor, which populates 3D right here. And so right here, we made our item class. And so that was a item. And so we want to change this where instead of being an actor, it's actually going to be our item class. So replace this from a actor here to a underscore item. And what this will allow us to do, or items, do nothing, I misclicked there. A underscore items again, and you want to make sure you select our class reference here. So change variable type, and this should be the only location for it, so we can right click, look for references, and we do have a second one here. And so just fine, no problem, shouldn't change anything. And so what this allows us to do is we can say, oh, well, we want this specific inventory to spawn store items instead of normal items. And because it's a child, it will work the exact same way, except for any logic that we're going to change. And so we're going to do that right now. So to do that, we're going to start by going into our item or our store item, and we're going to give it a variable for the price. So right here, variable, we'll say cost, and we'll make this a float. And so by default, let's say 150, and if the default isn't appearing, make sure you compile before. I don't mention that because I kind of just do it as a habit now, but you have to compile to make that appear. The way we can check if this works, very simply, we're just going to have a simple hover here. Well, no, actually, sorry, won't do anything yet for that. Right now, these all work with the basic, sorry, I closed that, I shouldn't have closed that. They all work with our basic A item, and we're going to leave it like that. We're not going to change it. And normally, I don't know if we exposed it. Yeah, we exposed it, so we can select this one here, let's say change 3D inventory and change it to be store. And so now all the items here that have spawned will be store items. So the difference we can do there is then we can say, for instance, just to check if it's working, put a print, and if we play, we should have multiple prints appear for the 1, 2, 3, 4 items there. So we can get rid of that. We know it's working. Next, we kind of have a kind of branch here. We can do things two ways. One way is we can say right here, let's say we drag an item in. We drag a store item here. The store item has the same logic as our normal items, but we can give it a price as well. But in a sense, that isn't brilliant as well. It has its advantages as it has its disadvantages, as if, for instance, you want each item that is, for instance, a L block or an I block to have the same price, then you want to add the price to our data asset. But if you want it to be specifically for an item that we place, then it's different. Then you want to have it be on the actor itself, because it can vary per instance. So in our case, we're just going to do it per instance. If you didn't want to do it per instance, and you want to do it that I block or every I block has this specific price, you just need to add a variable in the parent DA item. So you would add a float right here for price. And inside of store item, instead of using our cost here, you would just do this, get your item data, and you would just split it and just pass in the cost here pretty much once it's loaded. So in our case, we're just going to go with this. Now, even though we have a price now and we have a asset ready to go, because we want to stick to our idea of never casting to the item, we actually need to modify or add to our interface. So we want to open up our blueprint interface in our structure, I believe. There we go, BPI share. And we want to add 3 functions. First one is locked, which will return a boolean. So return value, we'll call this. Then we want another one we will call unlock item, and we don't need to have a return value here. And the last one will be lock item. So technically we're not going to use lock item, but unlock item is specifically to say, well, the item just got unlocked because the player has enough points. So if we drag it, it moves. So right now, by default, we're going to have to change these. So we're going to have to say within here. So let's go, sorry, not our DA items, not our, we want not our iBlock, not our 3D. We want to go to our store item. And in the store item, we're going to get our interface here. We're going to get our lock, unlock, and IsLocked. We're going to need it as well because we're going to need to promote this. So promote it to a variable, and we'll call this locked status, we'll call it. And so what this does is we need a means to track this information, because even if we have locked or unlocked an item, we have no way to remember that because a blueprint interface doesn't store any information. It just acts as a mean of communication. So that means if we say lock item, we need to say status becomes true, and otherwise unlock status becomes false. Now we make sure that we compile and we set this to true by default because we want the item to be locked by default. So now, if we go here, and let's say this is a store item here, if we drag this, or if we get a bit closer, I can't see it. So I should be able to just barely grab it. No, I still cannot. There we go. So as you can see, I can still drag it, and that's a problem because we don't want to be able to drag it. We want to actually tell it not to be allowed because there's a problem. So I seem to have got an issue here. Okay, so apparently this was invalid here. And so we can just, in that case, add a check because I don't think anything went particularly wrong visually or anything. So we're just going to avoid that error appearing by adding a confirmation that the dragging item is valid. So now we actually need to finally add some information to what we made before in our, like, I think first or second part for the movement, where we did try drag item. Now try drag item alone here is very simple. It's, are we hovering an item? Okay, we're dragging. That's simple. But now we have more to check. Now we need to check if it is unlocked. So because we know this implements the interface, we can say is locked, and this will tell us if it is locked. So we'll put a branch here, and if it is not, we're going to return false right here, and here we'll return true. If it is locked, if it is not locked, so not boolean, then we can go to true and we can actually move it. Otherwise we cannot, so we leave it false here. So if we try that now, I'm just going to move this to be easier to reach like this. There we go. And now we're going to try and move it, and it shouldn't allow us because it is locked. So if we grab this, as you can, I'm trying to drag here, it is not letting me because I've told it can't move it. So that's because we never reach anything past this point here, so we never actually initiate any of the logic. How do we unlock it? So now we need to get to that part. Let's start by going into our handler, because that's what's going to be doing most of the movement, and we're going to tell it that it has money, so we're going to give it a variable, so into variables, and we'll call this money. Simple as that. We'll put a float again, and we'll set it to, let's say, I believe we put 150, so let's put 200. So now I want to make a little bit of a print. We're just going to add a print here so we can actually see it. So just go and say print string get money here, plug it in here, and just to make sure we don't get spammed with messages, we're going to make sure this is called with a key so that it erases itself as it goes. So this will be money. So now if we play, sorry, the reason that won't print is because our handler, if I remember correctly, we told it to not run the event tick by default. It only runs it once we start picking up or opening the UI. So technically that's fine. We can run with that. That's not a problem. If we press tab, 200 appears on the screen and it will stay there. Okay. So next what we want is we need a means to know how much the item costs. So we can actually close A items. We don't really even need store for now. So let's go and do that. Let's see when we hover an item. So if we go into our line trace from mouse, handle the hit, we have start hover an item, I believe, right here. Start hover item. And so here we know the item. So the most basic thing we can do here is we're going to go back into our blueprint interface here again. So look for structure, blueprint interface. And we're going to need some more information. So I'm just going to put these in a category for storefront, we'll call it. There we go. So we're going to make a duplicate of lock item and we're going to say get item price. And so this is going to return a float. So get the float here. Then we can say, so this is the item price, or just say return value will do. There we go. And so now with this, if we go into our store item again, and we say, get our storefront, get item price, get the cost, plug the cost in here. And so now we have a means to access the cost. So if we go back to our handler now, right here where we start hovering an item, so we'll just move this back because we want this to be the last thing. If we're hovering an item, it's valid. Sorry, this is the old hovering, this is the new one. This considers our inventory. And so here from our get hovering item, we're going to say get price. And so with this, we can now check, let's say print, how much does it cost once we hover the item? And this only gets called once we hover the first time. So if your price can change for whatever reason, you need to be careful that this updates. In our case, it's not going to, so we can just leave it at this. Now, if we hover this, it should say 0 because the item doesn't have any price, but it doesn't matter because when we pick it up, it doesn't take any money anyway because it doesn't have any cost. But if we go to the one over here, it should say, I believe, 150. There we go. And we still can't move it. So that still does not work. So the next step is to compare. So in this case, we're going to leave this here so that we can kind of give an indication. So if, let's say, you wanted a UI to appear that says above the item, like we did with our input, so that we can pick, like we did with the icon to appear when we want to pick up an item, here we can do the same thing to display the price of an item above the item once you hover it, or it could be whenever you open the inventory as well, that works, or any other time. But in our case, on hover would be here, we can show the price. So save now. So in our case, we're going to leave this here for now. It's not a problem. And so we want to go back to our try drag item so we can redo another test. So if it's locked, it doesn't necessarily mean that we cannot move it. What we want to check is if we can actually purchase it. Now, we could do this by saying, oh, if we press E, it unlocks it. But in our case, we're just going to do, if you left click the item and you can afford the item, then you can move the item and it is now unlocked. So you can move it and like go and keep moving it after. It's not a problem. So to do that, we're going to go here and we're going to say for our hovering item, once again, we are going to say get price. And so now we know the price in our actual check for the drag. So if the price is inferior or equal to our money, then that means we can actually move the item, or at least we can afford the item, and we're trying to move the item. So if this is true, then we can keep going. And so what does that mean? That means here, if this is false, that means we can't afford it, so it is a failure. No need to ask any further. Now, on the other hand, if it is true, we need to say money minus this, which is the cost of the item, is equal to the new money that we have now. And so if we then say for our hovering item that it is unlocked, that means we can actually now move the item without any problem. And so we can't leave this here because we need to have this happen as well. So we're just going to move this a bit further and we're just going to bring this back around. And so what this means, because we have this separate, if the item is now unlocked, we don't care about the price. We can just move it. if the item never had a price in the first place, it would never be locked in the first place. So it can just move straight on here without an issue. So if we try again, right now, let's say we tab, we have 200 in the top left. We can move this item, no problem. We can move this item with no problem. But if we go to this one over here, we should be able to move it as well because it costs 150. But now, as you can see, we have 50 appearing. We no longer have the 200 we initially have, but we can still move this item without any issues because we've already bought it, so it doesn't matter. So we could also add, for instance, that when we hover, if the item is unlocked, we don't print because you can't buy it anymore, it's already been bought. So let's add a duplicate of this. So Alt drag to make a duplicate. And now we can see if we buy 2, can we still buy the second one? So drag this in, we're going to rotate it so that it fits. And I can't move the second one. And the reason we can't move it is because we cannot afford it. So I think that covers the basic storefront that I wanted to do. It kind of doesn't have much to do with Gloomwood, or maybe it does. I haven't exactly played the game or looked at much more than the inventory, unfortunately. So maybe this is a system that's in the game. I'm just not aware of it, but it's a basic storefront. It's nothing too complicated, but I thought maybe it's worth elaborating on something that goes a bit beyond the inventory, but still sticks to the systems. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I want to add one last thing before I leave, because it's going to be the last part. I've been thinking about making a extra video to this kind of series, and maybe I'll apply it to the other ones retroactively and going forward if you guys like it. But it's kind of a mix between, I guess technically you could say, game design and gameplay programming, where I want to take maybe a few minutes, maybe it'll take up to 10 minutes, depends, to take a more edited video where I go through kind of a diagram and a flow chart of the process of kind of going from seeing the Gloomwood inventory and thinking about how to replicate it in Unreal. And hopefully with that, I can kind of explain how I at least think about the process. And a lot of it comes from experience, so I hope that sharing that experience in this new way could be beneficial to everybody. So let me know if that's something that's interesting. I probably will make it if people are interested, otherwise I might just leave it aside because it is probably going to be a lot more work than what I'm used to. Thank you for watching. The project files will be on Patreon now, finally. Sorry it took so long. Sorry this video was a bit late as well. I've been really busy. But thank you for watching. Thank you for following along with the series, and I will see you in the next series. Goodbye.